Unfortunately, we are recording this on Sunday, and this shortly, a little while ago, actually, the news was delivered that um, David Prowse, the wonderful, lovely man who played the physical body of Darth Vader, had passed away. It was announced this morning by the his management company. Their statement says as follows: "It's with great regret and heartwarming retching sadness for us and a million of fans around the world to announce that our client, David Prowse, MBE, has passed away at the age of 85." I was taken by this. It was sad to hear. It was one of the last thing I expected, as if 2020 couldn't get any worse. Right at the tail end of it, we get this sad news, and I'll tell a little bit about like my thoughts on. We'll talk a little bit about Darth Vader and David Prowse in general, but first I do want to say like, just kind of respect him how I can. Darth Vader, obviously a very important character in film and Star Wars, and just in general amongst some of the best villains ever put to storytelling.
The best villain.
Yeah, and I just remember as a kid, you know, seeing Darth Vader. I don't remember the first time I saw it, but every time I saw that movie when I was a kid, whether it be A New Hope, Empire, or Jedi, I just remember being so intimidated by Darth Vader all the time. And it wasn't just because of the deep timbre voice from James Earl Jones. It was also the way David Prowse moved this guy around the room. He could definitely take charge with his body and just let everyone know through his hand movements, whether it's like pointing a finger at somebody or just walking, and the way he stands up really straight with his arms either behind his back or whatever. He put a physical attribute to this character that really is hasn't been done a lot. I mean, Star Wars did it with, I mean, Peter Mayhew did it with Chewbacca, but David Prowse also, they put a character disposition and trait to the way he talks, and I mean, not the way he moves around with his body. The physical performance of Darth Vader is a memorable one. And I just remember as a kid, it doesn't help that he's already like what, 6 foot 6, 7 foot, something like that. But the fact that he takes charge with his body is just, it's legendary. And people try to recreate it all the time in fan films, at conventions, in Rogue One. It's never the same, but I think, I mean, as far as like showing his face or using his voice, I'm also glad they didn't use his voice. I think it's legendary what they did with James Earl Jones as well. But at the same time, you needed his physical performance to make it happen. Anyone else in that suit, it just wouldn't have been the same. And I don't know. He's definitely going to be missed. Whether he wasn't allowed to be in Star Wars movies or TV anymore, regardless, um, he's a legend, and it's so sad to hear that he's gone. But Lando has a great story that I actually really want to hear, and I'm sure you guys would too, about the time he got to meet him. So go ahead, tell everyone about your thoughts on David and that lovely interaction you had with him.
All right. So, yeah, I have a really, really awesome story. I actually posted on Instagram this morning the picture I took with him at this comic book store. So I honestly, for the life of me, can't remember the year. Maybe 2006, 2007. It was just, I don't remember how or when, but I caught that David Prowse was going to be at a comic book store here in Indianapolis. And to my surprise, I go, there's nobody in this comic book store. I'm talking not a soul. So it's like me and my brother, my buddy Ross. He's been on my podcast in the past, but there's nobody in this comic book store. So I literally got to meet David Prowse in person, and I got his autograph. But bigger than that, bigger than autographs, I got to sit down, literally sit down in a comic book store for about 2 hours and have a conversation with David Prowse, just like we were having like tea or something. And we talked about Star Wars, obviously, and and you know, and the impression, the first impression that I got like when I was done talking to him and my brother and Ross, and what a very, very, you know, I laugh about it now, but what a very, very bitter man about Star Wars at the time. Just talking to him, we asked him about working with Alec Guinness, working with George Lucas. Like I said, every Star Wars nerd's dream. Like you sit down with Darth Vader, just like, what was it like working with Obi-Wan? What was it like working with Great Moff Tarkin? What was it like working with George Lucas? You got to work with George Lucas, but then all the answers you get, you're just like, what? I was like, was it like working with George Lucas? I never saw him. I barely ever saw him. He barely ever directed me. I'm like, what? George? Yeah, I'm not real fond of George.
Oh
Number
wow.
one, you know, he didn't use my voice for Darth Vader. He was, and like I said, like this isn't like me telling like stories. This is straight out of David Prowse's mouth. Like the conversation we had with him, he was very upset. His voice was not used for Darth Vader. I mean, I'm glad they didn't use it because Ray just sounded like British dude. Right.
And
It's
these are all
obviously
conversations like you actually had with him
these are real
firsthand.
conversations. Yeah, like I said, this isn't like speculation or right or anything. This is a real conversation that I had with David Prowse, his real feelings at the time, right? I'm not sure if at the time he was banned. I don't think he was banned yet from all the conventions because this was like mid late 2000s. Because eventually he got banned from Star Wars conventions. He wasn't allowed to go to them.
Yeah, I
Uh,
wanna I wanna ask about that because I actually don't know that. But so why was he banned from celebrations and stuff?
I don't, I don't know the reason, but like I don't know. Like I said, I guess we could research it, but like I do know he was banned, and he did not have a good relationship, obviously, with Lucasfilm, and yeah, and I guess like he was so bitter. I want to say because of all, like I said, remember my conversation is in a little comic book store between me and you know he's just talking to you know me and that's it. But like he has had interviews where he has come out and has, as I guess, has said some pretty nasty things about you know I don't want nothing to do with Star Wars or you know and stuff along the lines with the stuff that we mentioned with not using his voice, not using his face. Um, I guess not being, I guess behaving in a way for Star Wars to, you know, be available to the general public just to sign autographs. Cause you know, it's gotta be bad when you won't invite somebody just to sit at a table and sign autographs. That's a terrible fallout. And it's sad because he's the most iconic Star Wars villain of all time, and you don't have him at any of your Star Wars conventions. Just a great down to earth guy that I remember. But like I said, the taste in my mouth after I talked to him was he was very, very, very bitter about Star Wars. And as a you know as a huge Star Wars fan, you never ever want to hear like an iconic person who played the most iconic villain ever be like, yeah, I really didn't have a good time shooting that movie. George Lucas really
Yeah.
wasn't around. You know, they didn't use my voice, they didn't use my face. You know, I just, yeah. But Alec Guinness was good. He was sweet to work with. Yeah, he said he liked working with Alec Guinness. He liked working with Mark Hamill. He liked working with Peter Cushing. He he's a mysterious villain, and you just want to know more. And you know, we got the prequels, but you know, at the time, you make your own stories up. You're like, who is this guy? You know, all we got is Obi-Wan sitting on a log. You know, Anakin Skywalker. He was a good pilot. So you're just like, what's that mean? Like, or like, okay, like who was this guy? Like, what you know?
And like
He
when
was a
in
good guy.
Empire, when you see like the back of his head for the first time when he's putting it on, I
Oh,
remember as a kid going, like, "Where's the other
like
side? Let
what
me see."
happened? Like what happened? You're like, yeah, you
Right?
see all the scars. You're just like, what happened to this guy? And you're and you know, you all we have is the original trilogy, and you find, you know, George Lucas is just like, well, he got in a fight with Obi-Wan in a lava pit. A lava pit? Like what? How did he fall in a lava pit?
You know,
No, man, I just think it's a great loss for the Star Wars universe. You know, may he rest in peace. Like I said, at least he was 85 years old. I guess it was a short illness that took him. You know, we all want to live forever. We want honestly, dude, for me, what a huge loss for my childhood. Uh, you know, for me, like, yeah, man, that's like my first villain that I, you know, because you know I was a kid and I watched movies and stuff, but whatever for some reason, man, Star Wars just struck a chord with me, and obviously has stuck with me my entire life, right? It's just something about Star Wars, just the you know, stays with me, and yeah, man, Darth Vader was my first villain in Star Wars.
I'm glad you talked about your meeting with him because it made me think of something I never thought of before, and it represents how talented he is. And that's when you said that, you know, he really never met with George. He didn't take direction from George, which means this guy brought this character to life all by himself. And he knew what he was doing as an actor. He knew what he needed to do to this character to bring it to life on screen, and he knew how to serve the story, whether it was his voice or not. He's a very talented guy. And uh just because we talked about how he was banned from Celebration or from Star Wars and didn't care for his experience with the original trilogy, we're not saying he's a bad guy. You know, Lando said he was very nice to him and very open. And Mark Hamill made a tweet today that's talked about how such a lovely, sweet, kind guy he was. And that's all I hear from him really, is that he's was always 100% just a good dude. And uh, so yeah, we say goodbye with a heavy heart, and he left behind a monumentous legacy that we will never forget. So David Prowse, rest in peace, and we will go watch A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi this
When we get
week.
done, I'm gonna watch some Star Wars today with some David Prowse. My first Anakin Skywalker.
Yes.